The Dragon of Courage is my take on Tribal Wargreymon moving into BT14 and honestly EX5. EX5 offers no additional support to this deck, but it could be a fan favorite to play at Nationals. Keep in mind that my list has been kicked around with playtesting against D-Brigade, Beelzemon, Jesmon, and a few other homebrews I've been cooking with. With restrictions set for November 17th, the meta could see a potential shift. Is it much? Probably not. But I'll still give you the card by card along with possible substitutions, the strengths, weaknesses, and of course, the combos. Disclaimer, if you don't want to hear my arguments for all the cards, just know that this is a simple BT13 Raid Wargreymon deck that swaps out promo agumons for BT14 agumons and also implements training cards. This deck runs 4 level 2s, 13 level 3s, 10 level 4s, 8 level 5s, 6 level 6s, 2 level 7s, 6 option cards, and 5 tamers. For your level 2s, you could bump this to 5 using any other red Koromon. But for my particular variant, I still value the draw power of BT5 Koromon. If this Digimon has Greymon or Omnimon in its name, once per turn, draw 1. If the meta grows into a heavily dominated Mirage Galgamon format, I will 100% switch back to those BT9 Koromons for that 1000 DP buff. Because BT11 Mirage Galgamon can steal turns when you add a card, you sometimes need to keep it on your turn to combo off. Viably speaking, the newest BT14 Koromon isn't impressive to me in this build either, but for me, this card goes more in a Shine Greymon variant since the stack doesn't have to attack and Marcus can do the attacking. Level 3 wise, you know the drill. It's all Agumons. 1 from BT5 for the search for a Digimon with Greymon and Omnimon in its name. This card is a flex spot for me, as most decks these days tend to run 12 rookies with the inclusion of a mulligan. 4 Agumon X for the search of the X-antibody and a Digimon card with Greymon or Omnimon in its name. 4 from BT12 for the search off the top 4 cards for a Digimon with Greymon or Omnimon, and a Tamer with Tai Kamiya in its name. And the newest replacement for promo Agumon, 4 copies of BT14 Agumon. And while its inheritable effect is almost identical to promo Agumon, save for the fact that it now includes Omnimon in its name, the start of main phase effect is an absolute monster. Start of your main phase if you have a Tamer with Tai Kamiya in its name. This Digimon may Digivolve into a Greymon from your hand without paying the cost. Note that the Digimon must be Greymon specifically, not GeoGreymon, not Greymon X. But with this in the raise and 2 offense trainings out, you can Digivolve all the way to a level 6 Digimon off 2 memory. For some players, you may choose to omit the BT5 Agumon and instead slot in a 4th copy of offense training. My reasoning for not is mainly for the fact that you need a rookie to start your chain, and being a turn behind can be the difference between winning and losing. As for your Greymons, you run a fairly standard lineup. For my particular variant, I run the mandatory 1 copy of Greymon X. This is another way to reduce your Digivolution cost into 1 for Metal Greymon if you're going into the BT12 variant. That aside, it also provides 1 level of protection with the X-antibody. 2 copies of BT12 Greymon to play your Tai Kamiyas for free if you have them in hand and don't have one in play. While you could run more copies of this card, the problem is once my Tai hits the field, the usability of this when Digivolving effect is now gone. 3 copies of Greymon X to curve out the line of your level 4s and also add multiple levels of protection for your Digimon in certain matchups. Because blue source stripping is going to be a thing, some of these decks will want to punch out your opponent in 1 turn. And this adds another layer of sources in case your opponent tries to stun you. And lastly, the 4 copies of the typical starter deck Greymon. This Digimon's generic +1 security check can come in clutch, especially if your opponent is playing a lower stat line deck, and your Greymon X could potentially clear 2 by itself. In terms of substitutions, there are quite a few. BT14 Greymon may provide a similar inheritable to BT5 Greymon, but its memory gain effect is conditional if you have Tai Kamiya in play and when attacking. While yes, BT5 Greymon can definitely be used in the deck for higher DP thresholds and the extra memory gain, I chose to omit it mainly because of deck space. You may choose to forego the security attack +1, but I honestly think it's worth it. And lastly, the newest starter deck Greymon wasn't implemented for the fact that the memory gain for redirect isn't something I'm prioritizing. For a mid to late game variant, I could see it being played. But also, Metal Greymon X can't Digivolve from this Digimon, which is why I'm trying to make a seamless transition where possible. Speaking of which, this deck does not utilize the new Metal Greymon Ace. I can see their utility, but again, I feel like if you're going to use the Ace cards, they're more for a deck that plays mid to late game, and this is not one of them. This deck runs your standard Raid Metal Greymon from BT12, which can provide you the ability to attack a player and switch to an unsuspended Digimon with the highest DP to play a tamer. Keep in mind, the playing of a tamer can also be achieved by blocking on your opponent's turn. With Metal Greymon Alteros mode as another layer of protection, and Metal Greymon X for the extra security check, I think the level 4s and 5s of an Aggro Greymon deck have pretty much been standardized. Some decks may omit the Alteros mode and go ham with 4 Metal Greymon X's. Now for level 6s, I revamped this lineup as many times that I could, that in the end, it'll largely depend on the meta. As of right now, I've made it 4 copies of Raid Wargreymon from BT12. This Digimon has Raid and when Digivolving Reboot and plus 3000 DP. But all turns once per turn when the attack target is switched, unsuspend this Digimon. Raid Wargreymon I feel is the best Wargreymon out of any Wargreymon out there. Because it can Digivolve for 3 from any Digimon with Metal Greymon in its name, it makes it very easy to rip 2 or 3 security per an attack with Piercing. But even after your offensive turn, it also becomes a defensive option in conjunction with BT12 Taikamiya as a double blocker. While the newest BT14 Wargreymon does get Raid for the turn when attacking and Pseudo Blitz, I still feel the reboot option is much more impressive than Warp Digivolving. Some players may utilize this as a 1-tech. For me, my secondary choice for a 1-tech might be BT1 Wargreymon if the meta evolves into a more security heavy one, because negating option cards can be a bit nice. As for the Ace, again, it's more defensive. My last 2 options for the deck are the Wargreymon X, because if you're a little behind and your opponent has swarmed the board, double Raid with Wargreymon and the X-antibody simultaneously Digivolving into Wargreymon X can yield 3 deletions on board in a single turn. Not to mention the amount of memory you can sometimes get with Wargreymon X's effect for each security you break. Which leaves you to the level 7s in the form of Blitz Omnimon. Omnimon will always be one of the best finishers of the game, except in the case of Hybrid per game. It has its own form of protection from bounce and deletion based effects, and with Raid Wargreymon can get huge for a single turn. Players may opt for a single Omnimon X for trashing of a single security, so that if they blitz Omnimon and have the X-antibody, they have a simultaneous way to Digivolve into X for game if your opponent only has 1 security. But remember, both the reboot of Wargreymon and unsuspend of Omnimon fail in the face of Quartzmon. For option cards, I went with the following after testing. 1 Hades Force for generic removal and tamer removal. 3 offense training because this card is severely good. Like, so good that it kind of overtunes the stack. The offense training card reveals the top 2 cards of your deck, and lets you add any 1 red card among them to your hand, including itself. In total, this deck has 7 out of the 50 cards that cannot be added from this card effect. Its delay effect allows you to Digivolve one of your Digimon into a red Digimon in your hand by paying the Digivolution cost. When Digivolving with this effect, reduce the Digivolution cost by 2. So Greymon X, now in training form. Your Metal Greymons become 1, and your Raid Wargreymons also become 1. Like I mentioned earlier, you could drop the BT5 Agumon for another offensive training. But remember, these cards do not trigger when hit in security. And for this deck to really succeed, you want to hit a level 3 in your opening hand. And of course, X-antibody for the Digivolving up as you're attacking. Frankly, with the release of Tommy at 4 copies, I prefer this X-antibody to the protoform. Some lists in Japan went 1 and 1, but I still need to test more as I upgrade other decks. And finally, tamers in the form of 3 BT12 Taikamiya and 2 BT1 Taikamiya. While yes, BT12 Taikamiya can't be searched off offense training, it offers what I want more than the BT14 variant. Sometimes I gain memory when Digivolving. Sometimes I may not have enough memory to Digivolve and then attack. Likewise, if I can't attack, or they have a blocker setup that's bigger than me, the memory gain is impossible. In addition, it supplements the deck with little defense and DP. But BT1 Taikamiya is largely my memory fixer, and an extra security attack if I have 4 or more sources under a red Digimon. With x-antibody, this option card also helps. Strength-wise, Greymon has long gotten support for the game since BT1, and because of that there are a multitude of ways to play the deck. Frankly, because the deck is a linear stack-based deck like Jessamon, wider building boards can be a threat at times. I can't tell you how many revisions I went through before my Jessamon matchups felt more like 50-50. And while memory efficiency was hard for this deck in BT12 and BT13, after the restriction of Greymon X, the offense training cards greatly help out. Combo-wise, you have a lot of search potential with your agumons. Because of this, opening a hand of simply one agumon and one offense training can unbrick your hand relatively easily. Even then, your goal is to build up your stack in the raise, maximizing your DP, and security attack +1s where possible. Because a promote up of a BT14 agumon with a Taikamiya and 2 offense trainings can be game ending. Promoting BT14 agumon up with a Taikamiya in play means you can now Digivolve into Greymon for free. Greymon X can yield you another free Digivolution before you delay an offense training to go into Metal Greymon for 1. While you can't stack the effects of offense training, you use them once per Digivolution. Now into Metal Greymon X for free, then delay again for Raid Wargreymon for a cost of 1. With Raid Wargreymon's effect, you can attack, change target to the Digimon with the highest DP, and you have not 1, but 2 levels of protection from bounce and deletion based effects. Not to mention your plus 2000 from Agumon, plus 3000 from Metal Greymon X, and plus 3000 DP from Wargreymon's own effect, for a total of 20,000 DP. Going for, in this situation, a 4 security breaker. You can output a lot of damage with this deck like Jessamon, but knowing when and where to Digivolve is something that will take practice. I've had instances where having the BT12 Taikamiya for blocker wasn't going to give my Omnimon blocker because I decided to blitz, when I should have just put out another body. But in the grand scheme of things, Wargreymon is another deck that has many ways to play it, and luckily, all the cards will be available come November 17th. What were your thoughts on this variant, or in your mind, is it basic? This is Digi-Panda, logging out.